Hello everyone, and welcome to Lore Time with the Chibi Inquisitor. Tonight's topic is on the Eye of Terror. But first, an extract from the Galaxia Demonica Perpetua of Jerome by order of Inquisitor Dalma in 453.m35. The Eye of Terror is a realm of madness and despair, where skies weep blood, ancient stars burn in a multicolored flares, and the whims of the dark gods of chaos hold sway, synonymous with discord, terror, ancient secrets, and insanity. No other place in the galaxy fills the mind with such dread and foreboding. The Eye of Terror, called the Ocularis Terribus in High Gothic, is a massive warp rift and permanent warp storm nearly 20,000 light-years across, a nexus of psychic energy and physical space-time where the immaterium coexists with real space. It is the largest and most well-known warp rift in the Milky Way galaxy, and is located at the rimward edge of the galaxy to the galactic northwest of Terra, in the Segmentum Obscurus. It is home to the largest concentration of the forces of chaos in real space, including the traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines that fled from Terra after the end of the Horus Heresy. Incursions by Chaos forces into the surrounding Imperial star systems of the Cadian Gate, like the remaining worlds of the Cadian system, and those of Bellis Corona and Agrippina, are common, and in the recent 13th Black Crusade, launched in 999.m41 by Abaddon the Despoiler, from within the Eye of Terror, marked the greatest assault by forces of chaos upon the Imperium of Man since the heresy. In its wake, the Cadian Gate was breached, and the fortress world of Cadia itself finally fell to the servants of chaos. Travel and communication through the warp suffered increasing disturbances as the events of the 13th Black Crusade unfolded. Eventually, the materium could take no more, and a titanic warp rift tore across the galaxy, spreading from the Eye of Terror to the Hadrix anomaly on the eastern fringe. So was born the Citrix Maledictrum, the Great Rift. A quote from Eldrad Uthran, Farseer of the craft world Ufwe. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done, and all we ever shall. The Eye of Terror is not a naturally occurring astronomical phenomenon. The eye was created by the psychic shockwave that accompanied the birth of the fourth Chaos God Slanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, during the fall of the Eldari over 11,000 Terran years ago. The psychic shock of the birth was so great that it could not be wholly contained within the warp, but split out into reality through the minds of the Eldari who died on their lost empire's homeworlds, that now lie within the Eye of Terror, and are known as the Crone Worlds. Consequently, the Eye covers most of the region of the ancient Eldari Empire. Other zones of overlap between the warp and the physical universe were created at that time across the galaxy, but the Eye is the most significant and largest of these warp rifts. The Eye was originally designated a stellar anomaly, known as Cygnus X1, by the early astrological adepts of the Imperium of Man during the Great Crusade in the late 30th millennium. It was Pterabu, the Primarch of the Iron Warriors Legion, who would give the warp rift its name as the Eye of Terror in the early days of the Horus Heresy. The existence of the warp rift had haunted Pterabu all of his life, and his name for the anomaly was soon in use by the forces of Horus's traitors and the Emperor of Mankind's loyalists alike. In the wake of the destruction of Cadia, the Necron built Cadian pylons in the 13th Black Crusade that had long kept the growth of the Eye of Terror in check. The Cadian Gate was overwhelmed by the forces of chaos, and the Eye of Terror actually began to expand across the galaxy. Eventually, the galaxy was bisected by a massive new warp rift called the Great Rift, or the Citrix Maledictum, spreading from its heart in the Eye of Terror all the way to the Hadrix anomaly in the Jericho Reach in the eastern fringes of the galaxy. To those on the Terran side of the rift, it is a tainted scar stretching across the sky. To those unfortunates on the far side, it is something much worse, the very gates of hell, There, the light of the Astronomicon is obscured behind a psychic maelstrom of nightmares, and the entire region that has been dubbed the Imperium Nihilus, or the Dark Imperium. Though the reach of the Eye of Terror stretches across 20,000 light-years of the galaxy in real space, the region of space-time contained within the Eye constitutes its own reality, existing within both the material universe and the inferium dimension of the warp. Although planets and star systems exist within the Eye, the standard physical laws of reality no longer fully apply. Time is a meaningless concept, and matter, thought, and energy are indistinct and blurred with one another. The worlds within the Eye are known as demon worlds, and each planet constitutes its own bizarre sub-reality whose physical laws are shaped by whichever aspect of the dominant chaos god is venerated by its inhabitants. At the very center of the Eye lies the BIOS, a hole in the fabric of reality through which raw chaos energy pours out into the material universe. The warp and real space are indistinct and intermixed within the Eye, and the whole region is a maelstrom of psychic energy, impossible to navigate through normally, using starships without connection to the Dark Gods. Imperial starships avoid the area around the Eye of Terror for thousands of light years. Ships traveling too close to the Eye through the warp can be thrown far off course. They could also be caught in temporal whirlpools which carry them backwards or forwards in time, or which trap them there in a temporal limbo forever. The warp storms that disturb the Eye are so intense that there is little point in even trying to steer a starship in a particular direction. The Chaos Renegades and Heretic Astartes, who call the Eye of Terror home, simply launch their starships into the swirling energies of the warp, trusting fortune and the whims of the ruinous powers to carry them to their enemies. This makes most chaos attacks on the Imperial space random, sudden, and unpredictable, often occurring on worlds far across the galaxy from the Eye. The Eye offers a sanctuary to the worst of the traitors and heretics forced to flee from Imperial justice. For the traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines, the Eye of Terror has been their exile, sanctuary, and safe haven for more than 10,000 standard years, from which they strike out at opportune and seemingly random moments. The Eye is also a sanctuary for fugitives of Imperial justice and traitors throughout the galaxy, and all are welcomed by the forces of chaos. As fellow enemies of the Emperor of Mankind and the Imperium, mortals within the Eye are constantly exposed to the effects of chaos, becoming physically warped and mutated as their bodies come to reflect their flawed inner natures. The Chaos Space Marines of the Death Guard, for example, worship Nurgle, chaos god of death and decay, so that their bodies become bloated and putrid, incubators for every form of plague and disease known in the universe. The Imperial world of Cadia, laid nearest to the best-known stable gateway into the Eye. Consequently, it was the most fortified and militarized world in the Imperium, the first line of defense against chaos incursions into real space, thus earning the name the Cadian Gate. This area of stability was created by a network of Cadian pylons that can be found throughout the region, instruments of Necron technology that were erected millions of Terran years ago as part of the soulless race's great work to cut off real space from the interactions with the Immaterium once and for all. For obvious reasons, starships exit through this gateway far more often than they enter it. The War Master of Chaos Undivided and Chaos Lord of the Black Legion, Abaddon the Despoiler, led an attack through the Eye of Terror during a massive campaign in the 13th Black Crusade of 999.M41 that decided the fate of Cadia and many other Imperial star systems. Despite the best efforts of the Imperium's staunchest defenders, including the Black Templars, Imperial Fists, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves, the fortress world of Cadia, linchpin of the defenses surrounding the Cadian Gate, eventually fell to Abaddon the Despoiler, initiating the period known as the Noctis Eternia, the blackness, when the light of the Astronomicon began to fail and the Imperium was cracked in half by the birth of the Great Rift. Thank you for joining me for this in-depth look into the Eye of Terror. Hopefully, we will stay safe from the forces of chaos, and I will see you next time, friends.